Wow, Freedom Planet 1 was so good. I remember playing it for the first time like it was only 8 years ago. My god, I'm getting old. Anyways, today I'm here to talk about the long-awaited sequel to Freedom Planet 2. I know for a while this one is expected out in 2019, then 2020, and then just kind of it's out when it's out kind of deal, until we got a firm date of the 13th of September 2022 earlier this year. And yeah, this is one I was eagerly waiting for, as I know many others were, but as much as I enjoyed the original, it wasn't without its faults. Some levels really overstayed their welcome, the story tone shifted drastically from Saturday morning cartoon to dramatic depictions of the horrors of war, the voice acting was hit or miss.
Your son is moments away from inheriting the throne.
And while I personally thought the evolution from Sonic fan game to fully original project was really cool, so cool in fact that I actually did a documentary on it later on, the fact is that a lot of people felt that the first game perhaps stayed a bit too close to those Sonic roots. So how does Freedom Planet 2 fare? Luckily for you, I'm not going to make you sit through the whole video to find out what I think in that regard. The game is great, like really, really great. Hence why I'm tentatively calling this video Freedom Planet 2 Review, the art of a great sequel. Algorithm gods, please shine down on me. And to explain why I really like this game and why I specifically think it's such a marked improvement over the original, I'm going to divide the rest of this video into 5 parts: story, gameplay, presentation, inspirations, and how it compares to the original. And feel free to jump around the video using the timestamps in the description. Full disclosure before we go on, as I mentioned, yes, I did an Art of Failure style documentary on the original Freedom Planet. I made that doc because I wanted to put this indie project in conversation with the many cancelled or widely maligned Sonic titles out there. I mean, in regards to AOF as a whole, once that series is done with in the coming year, a whole third of it will just be Sonic development stories. Whoops. I thought it ironic how an indie title that faced its own share of development issues ended up not only releasing, but garnering a fan base of its own, while those bigger titles with a bigger budget and more marketing behind them all floundered. The Freedom Planet episode was the one positive story in AOF and featured interviews with project mastermind Sabrina Doduro and composer Leilani Wilson. Both would also later be guests at various points on the Speedrun podcast, and Layla herself has been a friend of mine for several years now. With all of this in mind, I bought my copy of Freedom Planet 2 with my own money on Steam at launch. This video isn't sponsored or anything, and no one involved knew I was going to make it. I just like the product. And I also just wanted to do a more traditional style review today. After all, while I do have a ton to gush about here, I have some criticisms as well. Off the bat though, there are a vast number of improvements from the original. I mean, just look at the two games side by side. And I think that also goes for the story. Don't worry if you're waiting to play the game itself to learn about the story. Since it just released, if you want to play it and avoid spoilers about the story, then you can just jump to this timestamp in the video right about now. There are 4 main playable characters here, returning from FP1 are Lilac, a water dragon, Carol, a wildcat, and Mila, a basset hound. New here as playable is Nira, a panda girl with ice powers who's the right-hand woman to the Magister of Shang 2. He's basically a king. Like in the original, there are 3 major kingdoms in the world of Avalis here: Shangmu, Shangtu, Suigong, along with the far less powerful Caribbean-esque nation of Perusa. You'll go through most of the same stages as each of the characters, though you'll often see cutscenes from a different perspective depending on who you're playing as. I know this could potentially wait for the presentation section, but all of the cutscenes are once again voice acted and just wow. Seriously, what a step up from the original. The voice acting this time around is so much more consistent in direction and overall recording quality. The character voices are all solid too. Yes, of course including Sash Lilac, who is once again voiced by Dawn Bennett.
You don't know what you're talking about! You don't know anything!
Speaking of her, along with doing voice actress work here, she also ate in a production role. Neat. But the one character throughout the whole story who steals the show for me is Mayor Zhao of Shangmu.
Don't mean to toot my own horn here, but fastest airship in the country right here.
He's so adorable, yet so very, very obviously incredibly corrupt. I mean, the guy has an entire amusement park with his face plastered all over it. Democratically elected my ass. with a few exceptions where the tone manages to shift way darker again, mainly towards the end. Freedom Planet 2 seems to be more comfortable tonally with what it wants its story to be. Heavy moments often have a joke to break the tension, and while in the original a lot of the humor was rather hit or miss, most of the jokes here hit pretty well.
Are you a bad enough dude to survive the battlesphere? If you are, you'll face me, Captain Kalau!
Must be 13 years old or to apply. The Battlesphere is not responsible for death, dismemberment, injuries, or hair loss of any kind. This advertisement is brought to you by Mayor Zhao and Zhao Entertainment Corporation. Grand prizes are subject to obtained at the discretion of Mayor Zhao at any time and are non-negotiable. All entrance fees are non-refundable.
Enter now!
Here's the biggest spoiler of all. You know Lord Brevin from the first game? Dr. Robotnik stand-in, alien, used to work for the CIA probably. Yeah, he's not the big bad this time. Maybe I missed something, but throughout my playthroughs, he doesn't actually appear at all. He's mentioned a few times, sure, and his personal lead henchman Serpentine shows up to cause some trouble for personal reasons. But Brevin himself really doesn't play a major role here. We have a completely different big bad in this outing. The main antagonist here is Megra. She was the last of the water dragons, which, wait a second, wasn't that also a moniker given to Lilac? What's up with that? Well, it turns out that yeah, these two are the only ones left, and before this game had no idea that the other existed. And there's a dirty secret about the peaceful world of Avalis. See, the Magister of Shang-Tu here, the goodliest of kings apparently, yeah, he's an Earth Dragon. The Earth Dragons were aliens who came to Avalis in the distant past and claimed to have bestowed their knowledge and goodwill on the savage natives, quote-unquote, the Water Dragons. According to Earth Dragon history, the Water Dragons helped the Earth Dragons build a giant dragon-shaped spaceship with a massive laser attached called Bukanawa, which they are meant to use to explore the universe together, a la Star Trek. And the dominant version of the story told on Avalis, the version put out there by the Earth Dragons, the Water Dragons began to crave power and tried to steal Bukanawa for themselves. However, this was going to lead to mass suffering, so the heroic Earth Dragons went to war against these evil savages to save the world, killing most of them in the process. In reality, the Earth Dragons wanted the power for themselves, and also had never actually been that kind or good to the Water Dragons. And by that, I mean the Water Dragons have been used as a source of slave labor by the Earth Dragons. Fun fact, I'm pretty sure this is an allegory for colonialism. So rebellion was started and quickly put down, with the Water Dragons being brutally genocided. The only ones who made it out alive, as far as we know, are Megra, who is a fierce warrior leader, and Lilac, who hadn't even hatched from her egg yet. To get her revenge on the planet, Megra sought to revive the ancient dragon Bukanawa and wreck shit up with that mouth laser. And like, look, threatening the planet is definitely not a healthy coping skill, but I can definitely understand why she's pissed. However, we don't learn about any of that until partway through the game. Leading up to all that, all our heroes know are that robots similar to the ones used by Brevin are wreaking havoc across the land. It takes a bit of time for this info to come to light, and all we know at the very beginning is that Megra, we don't even know her name yet, has somehow been awakened, and also this guy named literally AAA, accidentally destroys Lilac's house with a giant robot. Most of the story overall moves at a slower pace than the first game, but I don't mean that in a bad way. Instead of being fully linear, at points the story breaks into multiple paths that you can complete in any order, reminding me of Gunstar Heroes of all things. I like having choices, and though once we discover what Megra is up to and Mayor Zhao gets kidnapped, the story turns into hunt down mooks, protect places where people live, and stop the dragon from blowing up the moon, which is, say, fairly standard fare. But sure, even if that is the case, it's bolstered by strong character interactions and really fun to watch cutscenes. Each character has their own desires and motivations for wanting to protect the planet from Megra. Is it a journey of self-discovery? A quest of loyalty? Wanting to make friends with a mechanic with cripplingly low self-esteem? It's all here as you and your band of furries go off to save the world. Old foes will become allies, new friends will be made, betrayals will happen, and I think it's okay to lift a spoiler alert now, because all in all, it's just fun to play through. Ooh, one quick note in the cutscenes. I had an issue of just how damn long some of the ones in the first one were. That's never a problem here. That said, story-driven platforming might not be your thing, and if that's the case, you can always just play through the game in classic mode, which removes cutscenes in the world map and all of that stuff. Heading into gameplay, the way the game is structured is very different from the first. Instead of a linear level-to-level format, you now have a world map to explore. It's not massive and there's not a ton of secrets here on the map itself, but it's effective and has some good dang music and great art to boot. What are filled with a lot to explore and find are the hub stages. These are towns like you'd find in Zelda 2 or Shovel Knight. Interact with characters, buy equipable items, learn more general lore. Actually, the story itself somehow feels a bit less lore heavy than the original, and maybe that's because so much of the world here is brought to life by interacting with characters in hubs instead of being thrust in your face. And there's so much to do on the whole. Records to find for the sound test, exhibits to restore at the museum, even a fully playable 8-bit arcade game at the Battle Dome in Shangmu. The hubs breathe life into the world here, with the only weird issue being this invisible wall in Perusa. Speaking of which, this area has one of my favorite buildings, the History Museum, featuring a totally not broken self-guided tour. Going back to pacing, stages are no longer divided into multiple acts a la Sonic. Instead of each so-called zone featuring multiple smaller stages, you now just get single stages that average 7 to 12 minutes each. Certainly longer than Sonic fare, but it's very clear this game is breaking free from those Sonic roots. I can tell that in the stage design itself too. If Freedom Planet 1 was an homage to Sega Genesis platformers, Freedom Planet 2 feels like making the jump to the PS1. I think this is especially noticeable with Bakunawa. This big ass dragon is even bigger than Brevin's final dreadnought in the first game, and is represented by a 3D model. I know, a 3D model in a 2D game at that, how scandalous. This represents a trend I've noticed, first beginning in Sonic Mania, and now appearing in several other games such as here, and to a lesser degree in the recent Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit. You see, there are often small 3D flourishes in stages, and the occasional really intentionally jagged looking 3D model that looks like it was pulled straight out of Panzer Dragoon or some other Saturn or PS1 game. I never thought I'd feel weirdly nostalgic for a style of 3D models, but here we go, and I think it works well too. Unlike Final Dreadnought, which went on forever in 4 sections, Bakunawa is a whole world, complete with a variety of stages and bosses and even a hub. There were 2 parts of the game that really outstayed their welcome for me though. The first was this giant mech sequence in the following boss battle, which was cool at first but quite frankly, controls like ass. I just feel like the mech can't jump high enough to consistently dodge things how I'd like, and during the boss the punch sometimes knocks it back a bunch but sometimes doesn't, and it just feels jank. I also really have to mention the Nalao Lake stage as well. I don't have anything particularly wrong to say level design wise here, I just wish it was split into 2 levels, and both times I went through it, it took me over 20 minutes to beat it. Holy crap. The rest of the game is fine though. I love how Globe Opera is actually split into 2 sections and built up like it might be the final level of the game. And then, spoiler alert, you meet the bosses on stage at the end of Globe Opera and find out you're only halfway done with the adventure. In any given playthrough, expect to go through 24 different levels. Freedom Planet 2 is longer than the original, and that already was no slouch in terms of content. It's definitely best played across multiple sittings. Trust me, I did all my recording for this video over the course of a day off I had, and I felt like my eyes were burning afterwards. Please don't try that at home. This 4 to 8 hour adventure also features a nice variety of levels too. Callbacks to the first game, forests, caves, volcanoes, snowfields, shoot-em-ups, Fortnite, Carnival Night, a highway at night, the literal belly of a mechanical beast. And you have bosses ranging from giant mechs to a wannabe superhero to even a very pissed off whale. I keep using the word variety to describe FP2, but it's true. The stages even have a variety of gimmicks I rather enjoyed, from spinning around on gears to popping balloons to solving key puzzles. Not to mention all 4 characters play differently from one another. Lilac feels like a speedier version of Zero from Mega Man X. She can dash forward, block, perform an uppercut, and shoot at enemies. Carol is a Sonic stand-in here, but even she stands on her own with her jump wheel thing here and her iconic motorcycle, not to mention that she can wall climb. Mila, like in the original, is the most technical option, though she is definitely more refined here. Uses Scientist Dog's abilities to create shields that reflect attacks, control goo cubes, and use her ears to fly like a slightly less effective version of Tails in Sonic. Newcomer Nira is really interesting though. A bit of a glass cannon, she can use her ice abilities to freeze enemies into platforms, generate tornadoes, and flat out just stab things with a spear. She plays similar enough to the others for serious fans to easily get the hang of her, but different enough and so especially quick and snappy that it might take a little bit to master her, and that's more than okay. Before we move on to presentation, I just want to mention the game on the whole feels faster and snappier than the first. A real feat for a sequel to a momentum-based platformer. As Lilac and Carol especially, it just feels like you move faster than the original, and the game doesn't hesitate from making you blast off at full speed. From the use of the occasional speed booster to literally launching you off on a rocket from time to time. Maybe this is also aided by the new character designs. Compared to the original game, characters are taller, a little slimmer, a little sleeker, a little older looking, and a good bit less chibi. They also all appear a bit more detailed, especially in cutscenes. That's not to say characters in Freedom Planet 1 didn't emote at all, they certainly did, but characters here feel just that much more livelier. And the same goes for stage backgrounds. I remember the first time I entered the first stage I just thought, wow, just wow. I mean, it's similar to Dragon Valley in Freedom Planet 1 just at night and featuring this vine gimmick, but the moon in the background along with the stars and the details of sprite work make it go from good looking to straight up gorgeous. Like, I'd buy a poster of this. Some other notable areas for me that really caught my eye are the Shangtu Hub, Xiaoland, the core of Bukanawa, and the light section in Globe Opera 2. And these are just examples, because the whole game comes to life in a way that both evokes feelings of late 90s platformers and feels all its own. The same goes for the OST as well. While I'm still on the fence if I like it more than one or not, it's absolutely filled to the brim with bangers. You ever play a platformer where once you enter a stage and the music kicks in, you just feel determined to kick some ass at any cost? It's one of those OSTs. Music spans genres from house to rock to the calming sounds of an island vacation, and it's just plain spectacular. While, of course, I want to give special mention to the tracks done by Layla Wilson here, simply because I think she makes great stuff, she was one of just several composers involved here. And to all of them I say, seriously, great work. I hope I get to buy this on vinyl someday. Speaking of Layla, hey look, it's Verse. Already in the short time since FP2 launched, I've seen a ton of people fawning over Verse's design. She's canonically trans and a pirate, and if our flag means death has taught me anything, queer piracy is a recipe for success. Am I doing this right? However, Verse isn't actually originally from the FP world. She comes from Layla's novel, Symphony of Shifting Tides. It's a fantastic read, by the way, and I've linked to it in the description below if you want to check it out. I actually wanted to dedicate a whole short section to Cameos and Inspirations here because, well, there's a lot here that reminds me of other titles. A lot of stage designs and even some of the stage graphics give me big Mega Man X4 through X6 vibes, and that's a good thing. I mean, of course there is still 16-bit influence here. Classic Sonic, Gunstar Heroes, and even Donkey Kong Country have clearly left an impact. Of course, I've already mentioned how Bukanawa looks like a rejected Panzer Dragoon dragon, and more directly, Dragon Valley from Freedom Planet 1 returns here as an optional tutorial level, and I'm pretty certain that's the only returning level here. Going on, Xiaoland is pretty obviously an homage to Sonic 3's Carnival Night, down to the color scheme and the billions of poppable balloons. This boss spider evokes feelings of Mega Man X1, several of the bigger bosses give me big Gunstar Heroes vibes. Throughout each level, the camera is also often rather dynamic. The way it zooms in and out on you throughout the game really reminds me a lot of the old Neo Geo fighting games. Oh, and we gotta mention Captain Kalaw. This guy is the love child of Storm Eagle and Captain Falcon, and I can't get enough of him.
But fear not, good citizens. I, Captain Kalau, the Red Wing of Justice, have broken free of their dastardly programming and will live on to fight another day.
Did I mention that Globe Opera 2 has a section that reminds me of Titanic Monarch 2 and Sonic Mania with how it's set up? Because this whole branching paths that open a door thing really reminds me of that. In fact, I noticed a bunch of little bits and pieces that reminded me of Sonic Mania. Maybe it's because Christian Whitehead helped with the FP2's development. He worked on Sonic Mania, don't you know? isn't that kind of ironic? The game that actually had someone who worked on an official Sonic game involved actually feels much less like a Sonic game than the original. I mean, there are definitely Sonic-esque feelings at times. There are still slopes and loops and a character who enjoys rolling around at the speed of sound, but though I've gone to how the game draws heavily not only from Sonic but also from other titles, especially Mega Man X and Gunstar Heroes, it's done in such a way here that Freedom Planet 2 feels less like any of those, and more than anything else, like Freedom Planet 2. Freedom Planet 1 always felt tied to those Sonic roots. And to be fair, Sabrina Doduro wasn't nearly as experienced when she first started making that one. I mean, FP1 was made in Click Team Fusion. FP2 in comparison used a Unity-based engine that Whitehead tweaked to oblivion, and you can tell the difference. While the first game was a fun romp that felt at home with other retro-style indies of the era, FP2 feels like a title that could really spawn a huge, long-running series. It takes what worked in the first game and builds on it and brings characters who perhaps seemed like generic do-gooders at times in the original and turns them into fully fleshed out characters who I wouldn't mind seeing in a cartoon. Or well, at least in a Sonic Mania Adventures-esque set of shorts. Do I think both games are worth playing? Absolutely. I know I'm probably coming off as very critical of the first game, but again, I liked it enough to do a positive documentary on it, linked in the iCard above. I'm not a fangirl. I'm going to point out faults when I see them. And I also need to fully answer the question from the beginning of this video. Why did I use the subtitle The Art of a Great Sequel? Well, a good sequel is something that, while as good or even not as good as the original, is still way fun in its own right. A great sequel, though, is something that, through refinement and passion, manages to surpass the original in quality. And the best of those do so in almost every conceivable category. Freedom Planet 2 is in that lattermost category. At the making of this video, Freedom Planet 2 is out on Steam for PCs and slated to be released on most modern consoles in 2023. I've linked to the Steam page in the description below, along with everything else I've mentioned today. If you are on the fence with Freedom Planet 2 or waiting for reviews to come in, I hope this is enough to help you decide. If you need someone to say, go buy the damn game, I'm happy to be that person. If you're a fan of this genre or like the original, then go on, do it. I bet you're going to have a great time. So on that note, were you as excited for Freedom Planet 2 as I was? Did you enjoy the original? Were you more excited for this one or Sonic Frontiers? I know several folks have been waiting for Freedom Planet 2 to come out ever since the first game first started becoming fairly popular, and really happy to see that this one not only met my lofty expectations, but surpassed them. God, it's really nice. I feel like I've become a harsher, more critical person with age, but this one just hit the perfect sweet spot for me. I know the year's not over yet, but this one might just be my game of the year. So on that note, feel free to join the folks on screen here as a Patreon patron or YouTube channel member for as low as $1 a month, get early content or even some exclusive content, including some new pieces from over the past few weeks I should have up there in the coming days. But if you don't want to do that, then I am more than happy just with a like and a subscribe. So, thank you.